First time here. Well, good day, my friends. It's your old pal Jordan the Lion and beautiful Katie. And today we are in Charlotte, North Carolina, and we are here to visit the famous Hilton sisters. Now, recently, Scott Michaels and I were actually at an antique mall, and we found an autographed Hilton sisters picture. And I was thinking, you know, what are the odds, because I was planning on coming here anyway. They had a very sad life. They had their life started very low, hit some very extreme highs, and then hit some extreme lows again. We're going to tell you their story. They're buried here in Forest Lawn Cemetery. Daze with Jordan the Lion and the beautiful Katie. It begins right now. So we know they're in section M, but they're not under their names, Violet or Daisy Hilton. The headstone actually reads Thompson, Troy Thompson. So the best way to find it is to come all the way to the back of the cemetery. You'll see a big tree, and you'll see a big, giant headstone that says Gully right here. If you go just behind, you'll see veteran Troy Thompson right here. He is listed over here on the left, and Daisy and Violet Hilton, who at one time won a settlement worth $1.5 million in today's money, which was $100,000 in their time, ended up here because they were basically broke. Now you see people leave money up there. They were conjoined twins, and their story is they were connected at the bottom vertebrae where their butt was, so they shared a circulatory system but did not share any organs. And when they were born, their mother, Kate, was a barmaid who was not married and thought that having them was a punishment, and sold the two girls to her boss, Mary Hilton. And Mary Hilton owned a pub and immediately put the girls in the window on display. When enough people came by and were interested, she moved them to a back room, and she would charge 2 pennies to come view the girls. And they would actually write a book later on stating that their earliest memory was being in this darkened room smelling stale ale and pipe and cigar smoke, and having people prodding them and lifting up their shirt to see if they were indeed conjoined. Now, the reason that they're here sharing a headstone with Troy Thompson is that Troy Thompson's mother actually owned both plots. And when the Hilton sisters ended up retiring here in Charlotte and they passed away, they had no family members. They had no one in their tree to contact, and so she donated this piece of land for their final resting place. So Mary gave them their start basically collecting those pennies in her back room, but she realized that she could do a lot more and make a lot more, and so she got them in a touring show that toured all over Europe, because when they were actually born in the UK. And so they toured around there making money, and then eventually Mary had the idea to bring them to the US, and when she tried to get them in San Francisco, they were denied because they were found to be medically unfit. And apparently she went to the media about this and ended up getting them got them accepted, and then of course continued on showing them in circuses, sideshows, and basically just collecting money. And apparently Mary was never married. Well, she wasn't married at the time, but she had men coming and going from her life constantly. And apparently the girls were beaten and abused and verbally abused. I mean, just about everything you could. They had no freedoms, no rights, were not able to do anything. They had to call the men sirs. And eventually, when they were about 15 years old, Mary ended up dying. So you would think that they would be free, but they weren't. they ended up going into the care of Mary's daughter, and she put them through an even worse life.
Upon coming to America, once Mary Hilton died, it was her daughter Edith who basically and illegally ended up taking ownership of the girls. That's one thing that you're going to see in a lot of literature about the girls, is that they always referred to Edith and Myers.
Yeah, that was his name, the
yes,
balloon salesman.
The balloon salesman, an Australian balloon salesman. The girls always refer to them as their owners. And once that happened, I mean, they did the kind of the circus. And
they wouldn't let them out of their sight, too. They made them sleep in the same room.
They were afraid that people would take them, but eventually they kind of got off onto the Vaudeville circuit, which was probably a little bit of a silver lining for them because they were a huge attraction back then. They shared the stage with the likes of Charlie Chaplin and Bob Hope, and the girls were making a very good salary, about $5,000 a week, and that's what a lot of big names were making on that circuit. They were saying people like Gracie Allen and George Burns, they were making a lot of money. So
it was like the equivalent, we found out it was like $75,000 at the time, and the girls would get nothing. They
never saw a penny.
Yeah, they told Harry Houdini, who they were out doing shows with, they told him that like they had no life, that they had no money, and so he started putting in their head that they should get emancipated and that they should seek a lawyer that could give them freedom. And the girls would actually say in their book that if they could pick someone to be their father, that it would have been Harry Houdini. So the girls basically escaped. They literally escaped. Someone helped sneak them out from the parents, guardians, whatever you want to call those people that were, you know, keeping them. And the girls escaped to the police and told the police, you know, we've been living like rich kids but prisoners. We can't do anything. So once they got their freedom, their lawyer said he holed them up in a hotel for their safety and everything, but he said they never had been able to buy anything. So he said they immediately started buying tons of hats and tons of clothing because they never got to dress like adults. They always had to dress like little girls, and they had to look exactly the same. So the girls took their money and started partying, and they started going out with men, and they started dyeing their hair so they would look different. And the girls ended up one of them got pregnant, but they both ended up getting married.
Yes, they did.
But a crazy story, because one of them was trying to get married. I think it was Daisy, tried to get married in 21 different states, and it kept getting turned down because they looked at a marriage of like that as bigamy, which was kind of surprising. So the other ended up having like a whole thing where they did a publicity stunt for a marriage at the Cotton Bowl and sold tickets.
Yes, they did. It was a huge attraction. They said people waited for up to 20 minutes just to be able to go in the receiving line and get an autograph from the maid of honor, the bride and groom. So it was relatively a great publicity stunt. It was a great success, but
people didn't know it at the time that it was, and they said that the guy that she married was gay.
Yes.
And he's the guy that we found out opened a restaurant later on and claimed that he invented the taquito, which we were laughing at.
Dream big. I mean, this story has a lot of very interesting twists and turns, so let's throw that into the mix. Why not?
And the girls ended up getting to make a movie. They were in Todd Browning's Freaks, which became a movie about the sideshow, but they thought, they were kind of pitched that it was going to be more, that it was going to shine like a lighter side to it. And they would even say later on in their lives that we mistook making people happy on stage for happiness in our own life. And eventually they had been doing this for right around up until 1940, when they kind of decided that they wanted to get out, and their popularity wasn't quite as big as it was. So they went to Miami and invested their money in a hot dog stand. But unfortunately, there were other hot dog vendors, and they said when they first opened, they were an attraction and people were really coming there, but the vendors got mad and started sabotaging them.
That was competition. I mean, they thought that they were going to take all the competition away from them. So it started off great, and they said about a year it went under, unfortunately. It was something that they thought people would want to come and see them, and they were very friendly. They were always very friendly to people. So it was something that was kind of a shot. It didn't end up working out, unfortunately.
Now, because of that, the girls were kind of forced to go back into the vaudeville circuit, or what there was left, but their popularity wasn't very big, and because they had done that wedding stunt, it was a hard time for them to get booked. And it was even said that they turned to partial stripping as part of their performance. But eventually what they got into doing was I guess they reissued or brought Freaks out for a second run, and they kind of took advantage of that and started offering to come out to cinemas and drive-ins to promote the movie while they were having the showing and everything and meet fans. And on one of those appearances in Charlotte, the agent that they had took their money and left them in a parking lot here with nothing, and that's how they ended up in Charlotte. We're gonna go around and we're gonna take you to where they ended up working to make their living and where they ended up dying, but that's why they ended up living out their days here in Charlotte. They really had no other choice. So we read that it was very customary to leave 2 pennies because that's what the admission was to see them in the early days. So we've brought some pennies out and we're gonna leave them for the ladies. And like I said, I think it's really nice that someone in the community cared enough about their history. I mean, it was crazy when Scott bought his autograph picture. I said, hey, did you even compare it online to see, you know, how the signature looks and everything? And the first thing, when he typed in their name, he found an autograph that Clark Gable had written to them. So it was just kind of one of those great moments. So here on the Thompson headstone, you have Troy right there, who was a veteran and war hero, but his mother donated this plot for the sisters, Daisy and Violet. And it was also kind of funny to us because we read that that they were opposing when it came to political views. So we found a funny photo where they're at like a political event and they're meeting with a politician, and one sister's happy and the other is looking completely
she looks
away.
Like she's sucking on a lemon.
Yeah.
So.
And when you think about it, you know, probably the other question, definitely a question we had before we started reading up on them, was like, how did you have a sexual relationship with someone when you're conjoined? And they said, I just turn my head, read a book, and eat an apple. And that's how it was done. But we were wondering what happened to Violet's son. And she did end up having the baby out of wedlock and put it up for adoption because they felt like it wasn't going to be conducive for their career, I guess, with the lifestyle that they led and everything. And we couldn't really find out what happened from there, from the adoption. So Katie, go ahead and leave our pennies here, sweetheart.
And you know what? It makes me happy to see that there's other people out here who obviously know who Daisy and Violet are, and they're paying their respects, so that's good to see.
Yeah. We also saw they were able to drive because even though they were conjoined, they realized that if they bought a driver's instructor's car, that they had the pedals and the steering wheel on both sides. So they bought a driver's instructor car and both could drive. Now we're gonna go to, they actually ended up getting a job at a grocery store. So we're gonna go over there and tell you what their job was. You might be wondering how they could pull in $5,000 a week just being, you know, Siamese twins or, you know, conjoined twins, but it was because they had been forced to learn various instruments, so they were very talented performers. Hi there, Ja. You're in North Carolina. We always have a good time in North Carolina. Let's go see where the Hilton sisters worked. So this used to be the Park and Shop grocery store, and once the ladies got ditched, all their money taken, they started working here. Now they came here and actually offered to work for one wage, 2 people for one wage, but the owner of the grocery store, Charles Reed, said no, I'll pay you separately. And he ended up making them produce weighers. He set up a table in the back, because at the time people would buy produce and you'd have to weigh it out and everything. That was a big business. So they would take their produce or whatever they were buying to the back of the store, and the ladies would be back there at the scales and they would weigh them out and price them, and they set it up so that both of them could work at the same time. They ended up working here for 7 years until all of a sudden one day Charles Reed got a call that the ladies were sick with the flu. Apparently Violet had it first, and then she got better, and then Daisy got it, and he gave him a couple of days off, and then all of a sudden he quit hearing from him. He would call, nobody answered the phone. It was said that if they didn't want to be disturbed, they would just take the phone off the hook. So at one point he called and the phone was no longer on the hook, so he and his wife went over to a home that the girls were renting from their church. So we're gonna go over to that house now. So this was the last home that they shared. They were renting this place from their church, and when they were no longer answering their phone or anything, their boss came with his wife and was able to push open the door. And when he came in, he found that the girls had passed away. They were huddling over a heater vent trying to stay warm. They found out later that unfortunately Daisy had succumbed to the flu, and 4 days later Violet then succumbed to it, and they believe that Violet was just so weak from the flu that she couldn't get to the phone, wasn't able to pull herself over, because you got to remember they were 4'11" and 83 pounds individually is what it was decided. They said that they were friendly. I mean, they kept to themselves when they were at home, but they would get their co-workers Christmas gifts, and they would walk to and from work. And when they went through their house at the end, they found a lot of pocketbooks and things like that. But in the end, they had $1,400 to their name and no relatives or anyone to make any kind of arrangements. So at least they have a final resting place. Not everyone in the circus field or the performing field like that got so much. So thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. Rest in peace, Daisy and Violet Hilton. It's such an unfortunate story of what they went through. They never really treated like people until the end of their lives, and they ended up with not much. Stories worth remembering. And American Horror Story depicted their story in one of the seasons. They have made documentaries about the sisters, so there's a lot of information out there about Daisy and Violet Hilton. Have a great night. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.